with a win tonight. Timberwolves with the ball. Rudy down the lane. Runs it up off glass. Hits it in a foul. A three-point opportunity for Rudy Gobert. Timberwolves take the lead. The run continues. It's now 30-9.
Welcome. Good morning to 9 to noon. And this is the 651 Carpets Plus Studios. I am Eric Nordquist, Nordo, in for PA. A couple more vocal maintenance days around the corner. A Friday feast with Charch tomorrow. But today it is Nordo and it is Max Fuller in here 9 to noon. And you heard that highlight there. And it's not too long ago, a team playing basically into June, the Minnesota Timberwolves, and their season in the Western Conference Finals. Summer League in play. Olympics around the corner. Very fun summer of basketball in a city that was captivated by the Howl, which is why I wanted to kick off the show with voice of the Minnesota Timberwolves, Alan Horton. How you doing, my man?
Nordo! Good to see you.
It's good to see you. How have your vocal maintenance days been going? Now, typically, for the voice of the Wolves, you've had a little more time. Now, this is a bit of a shortened and or truncated summer, given a squad that dazzled us en route to the Western Conference Finals. But it's the summer of love, summer of hoops right now for the Howl. It's great to see you again.
It's great to be back in the KFAN studios. It is awesome to hear a highlight like that, especially Rudy and getting ready for France. You got Ant with Team USA. You've got Nikhil with Team Canada. And one of the few additions the Timberwolves made in the offseason, we now root for Australia because Joe Ingles is there. Joe Ingles will be a part of the Timberwolves coming up next season. But it's been a different offseason for exactly the reason you mentioned. Playing almost till June really shortens everything else. I mean, we were having draft workouts while the Wolves were still playing, and it was confusing because I'm like, wait, this happens usually 3-4 weeks after the season is over. But, oh, yeah, when you go deep into the postseason, those games get spread out. Those draft workouts come up quick. The draft comes up quick. And then Summer League comes up quick. And then August is really the downtime all across the league. Everybody really takes their time off in the month of August. Then you get geared up at the end of September because that's when training camps start.
So I want to get to the Olympics. I do want to get to camp. And, of course, I believe tonight, actually, and it's a late one. So set your alarms, get the coffee on. The Wolves, the Wolves and Rockets, their fourth Summer League game. But as we were coming in here, good to see you. Okay, and it's been a while. What's going on? All of that, the necessary small talk that exists between people. There were some initials conversation, and we talked a bit about it off the air, but on the air, this is an opportunity for you to create some sort of proclamation, as I believe you are participating in the first of the initials invitational matchups, and Max Fuller happens to be participating in said matchup, and that's on a Monday.
This is Monday. We're going to tip it off, I think, with the best group. Max, you can jump in there easily if you want.
Yeah, for sure.
5 of us going Monday morning, and I think the goal is obviously to knock off Doe. He seems to be the favorite. He is the seed. He's the top seed at number 6. Then Max, then myself, Gavin Kaysen is in there, and Radio Fallness is in there. Kevin Fallness, how about that?
Well, I mean, that's not going to provide a lot of resistance.
He's the worst.
I get that feeling from everybody I bring this up to.
Yeah, from like roadblock, like the cement berms to a speed bump. He's probably closer to the bump. I have not met
Kevin in person. We've always just texted or DM'd, but obviously we're big fans of each other. So I'm going to team up with anybody I can to try to get myself to the next round.
Doe is good, but at the end of the day, he's a baseball nerd. You just got to stuff him into the locker, give him a wedgie, give him a swirly. That's what you do to nerds. You know what I'm saying? Fallness is the worst.
We stay away from the baseball questions. We'll be fine.
Everything. And Gavin Kaysen, I'm too broke to even eat at his restaurant, so I don't care. I'm only worried about you, Al. I'm only worried about you.
I don't think you have to worry about me.
Doe's been on Jeopardy.
He literally been on Jeopardy.
Maybe
overrated, different game.
Maybe that is the thing. If I need to know about the Renaissance, I'll talk to Doe.
Right.
If I need to know, XYZ clues for CL, right. That maybe that levels the playing field. But it's going to be awesome to see you back here on Monday morning. Now, Summer League, you've been to Vox for a long time for the Wolves. You ever go out to Vegas, or
I have.
You watch it from afar? So you have been out to Vegas for these things.
A couple of times. The Summer League has become so big in Las Vegas that the league holds a lot of its meetings out there too. And why not? It makes sense. All 30 teams have been there for the last 10 years. All 30 teams. But really, Vegas really started like in 2004. It hasn't been that long. And that started with like 6 teams. Then it grew a little bit. Then it grew some more. Some of the other summer league venues kind of shut down, and everybody just made Vegas the place to go. So you'll have owners walking around, CFOs. I've ridden elevators with and everybody's wearing their name tag and everything. So you can say, hey, there's a CFO of the Miami Heat. I'm like, what's up? And sometimes we've had some broadcast meetings out there. I was there a couple of years ago. And it's just it's crazy. If you're an NBA fan, I do suggest at some point going out there and experiencing it, because it's great. You've got the 2 arenas that are attached, and you can walk in between the 2. It's generally open seating, so first come, first serve. And you walk around and you'll see personalities, players, guys that aren't even involved in. It's kind of like a little Super Bowl week too, where you've got the NBA players pimping some products. And showing up for their team and everything. You saw the Wolves out there. Mike Conley was there. Karl Anthony Towns was there. And it's really a who's who out there. It's really kind of fun. Sure, it's super hot. It's not ideal, but guess what? You're spending your time inside anyway. It's really just those points of time where you're moving from A to B, from the hotels, the casinos, to Thomas and Mack Center and Cox Pavilion.
Yeah, and just given how things go for me during the summer, I've never within the last decade been able to go out and experience any of that at all. But like going to the combine for the NFL, I love the fact because it's everybody there at the same time. And you kind of get to be a little bit of a rube. You kind of get to be just an adult child for a bit. It's like, oh, hey, there's so-and-so. You bump into these players. You see these execs. I saw somebody taking a selfie with Tim Conley. I saw that out on X, those sorts of things. Just the fanfare around it if you're truly a hardcore. And you get to see the kids. I mean, I'm so obsessed right now with Terrence Shannon Jr. And Rob Dillingham.
Yep.
I need to go to Vegas to see these guys. Not going to work out.
It helps to have a focus on who you want to see, because guess what? The basketball is not at a high level. It is not going to blow you away. Teams aren't necessarily trying to win. There are other focuses out there that are more important. So it is helpful to have a couple of guys you want to see. And for the Wolves this year, you've got a good number of young players that you kind of need one of these guys to hit. Nordo, you mentioned Rob Dillingham. He's going to be in the rotation. Tim Conley has announced that and said that they didn't trade a future first for the number 8 overall pick out of Kentucky for him to sit on the bench, maybe come off the bench, but he's going to get an opportunity. Terrence Shannon Jr., TJ has been playing really well in Las Vegas, and then I think there are some other guys that. We're looking at Jalen Clark, who didn't play at all last year because of the Achilles injury. He was a second-round pick. You've got Leonard Miller, who's shown some flashes. Where does he fit in? Can he fit in? And then Josh Minot, who's now entering his 3rd season. The Wolves used a second-round pick on him. Can one of those 5 guys, or 2 of them, I think Rob Dillingham, again, is in a different category, and TJ appears to be in a different category, too. But you're going to need a couple of those guys to hit and to be parts of the rotation, because you're spending so much money on the top half of your roster. This is what the league is going through. All teams are going through, is you spend your money on the high-end guys, but you've got to get through 82 games. And to do that, you need to get rotation guys. You need to get minutes out of your 9, 10, 11, 12 guys. You're going to need them at some point.
The one thing that I've liked about Summer League thus far is not only Chris Hines doing a terrific job, and I know that Chris Finch is there as well, but you're seeing how this plays out. I'm seeing Chris Finch's philosophy. I'm seeing the identity of this team play out in these games, and I do want to get to the quality of basketball, because there have been some interesting elements of that as well. But you mentioned Leonard Miller. I mean, how many 6'10" guys could be? Maybe that's the bit, because whether it's Garza, tall shooter, Leonard Miller, you're right. And in this most recent game, I think he may have been their best player, really.
Right. He had 22 points, he had 13 rebounds, 8 of them offensive. That was really his best game, I think, of the Summer League so far.
Him and Deshaun Nix, who I want to get to him. Dacian, excuse me.
Now, Dacian, that's a good point you brought him up, because he's on a 2-way. He's a little more veteran guy, but he's also in that mix. I like the way he played in Houston for a couple of years. He got some playing time. That Houston team kind of struggled for 2 years. It was not the team that we saw last year from Houston when they got Ime Udoka in there to take over and made some changes. But Dacian's coming back on a 2-way. Can you get minutes out of him? Can he crack the rotation? So really, I think those are 6 guys, if you include Dillingham and Shannon Jr., that you've got to find a couple of those guys that can jump into the lineup and be part of that rotation.
Yeah, and just kind of seeing the defensive focus. I mean, this team can defend even at the summer league level, and we're going to talk about some people's shooting woes thus far and what to make of that, how much to care about it at this stage. But yeah, it's Miller. He's tall. Then of course we get to Cat and Nas and Rudy.
Yep.
I mean, Rudy's never going to shoot anybody's lights out, but all the same, we might just win by being the biggest team in the NBA, being able to outrank you.
They haven't changed their philosophy, right?
No.
To be big, to be long, to be good on the glass. They've brought back everybody that you just mentioned, Nas, Cat, and Rudy, and then bringing back Luka Garza. And where does Leonard Miller fit into that? Can he create some minutes for himself? Maybe at the 3. Could you go a bigger lineup with Leonard Miller at the 3?
Yeah,
he's more likely a 4 or a 5, maybe
right.
Small ball 5. But you've got possibilities, and the Wolves have kind of doubled down on going big because all those guys are back.
So let's dig into it then. How seriously overall? Because you hit on a point I was kind of chatting about it yesterday. Is watching the Sixers game, for instance. Mm-hmm. There are just moments of pure desperation. Josh Minot just chucking up shots and just kind of a frenetic pace, a comedy of errors with turnovers. Terrence Shannon Jr. trying to look like Steve Nash in the key a couple of times, and people not being able to hold on to the passes. Sorts, just there's a lot of fun. It ain't the NBA playoffs when you transition to Vegas. So in the case, let's start with Rob Dillingham, for instance. He's been up and down. He was better in the Pacers game, but mostly he was dreadful in the Pelicans game offensively. And then and great passing, by the way. Yeah. I mean, already you can see a vision there that's going to be fantastic once he gets the shot moving. But then more regression up and down for the 8th overall pick to be expected. Not making mountains out of molehills here. How do you view that?
Yeah, I think it's the normal process basically. And the biggest thing with young players is the lack of consistency, right? Like you can have a good game and then you'll have a bad game. Then you'll have another bad game followed by 2 good games. It's 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes. The couple of things that have jumped out about Rob Dillingham is his speed, his ability to beat people one-on-one, still finding some comfort or consistency with that shot. The turnovers have been up a bit, but you mentioned it, the passing too, and Chris Hines mentioned the defense that he has played. They've been impressed with that. So you can see some of the things that Tim Connolly and the front office were looking at when they drafted him and made the decision to trade with San Antonio and snare him with the 8th pick. But it's about consistency and finding a comfort level. Sometimes you can see the game moves a little bit too quickly for some guys in summer league. And it's a whirlwind of what's going on out here. And that's where you see the turnovers, the drop balls. Like I said, the basketball is oftentimes not at a high level.
Yo, what's up, Al? Just transitioning over to the global game and the Olympics coming up. I just wanted to hear your thoughts about how Anthony Edwards has been so far leading up to their handful of showcase games. He said that he was the number 1 option. Lots of people called him a madman, but he's been one of the team's leading scorers in almost every showcase thus far. Do you truly think that Anthony Edwards is Team USA's number 1 option? And just talk about what this whole run with this team is going to do for Ant's game.
It's great to see that Ant hasn't changed, right?
Yeah, right.
A1 from day one. I mean, he's telling everybody that he can beat everybody in swimming. Again, it's just
that was so funny.
It's the same mindset that he's had since he got here 4 years ago or 3 years ago. It's just it is awesome. And there's not many guys that just can say the type of things that Ant says about, hey, this is a team with Steph Curry on it, with LeBron James on it. You got an MVP in Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, who I don't think has played so far, but is on the team. And here's Ant just saying, yeah, I'm the number 1 option. There's no doubt about it. Why would you question that? Nothing's changed. But he gets away with it, right? Because of his personality and just, it's awesome to see. But he backs it up with his play on the floor. And Max, I think we saw him take such a huge step in the postseason this past year. And that was the biggest reason the Wolves got to the Western Conference Finals is he made that leap. And it's just, he's played a lot of basketball recently because you think about it, the World Cup was last fall. Yeah. He goes right into this past season, his 4th year, and then right into Team USA again, and then he'll go right into this following season. But, the sky is the limit for him. It's just, it's really impressive. And now he is this is the next step, right? Because now he is doing it with LeBron and Joel Embiid and Bam Adebayo and Devin Booker, all these guys, even better roster than we saw last fall with Team USA. So it's not surprising because this guy has accepted every challenge and thrived in it his entire career.
It's the coolest thing ever to hear international audiences oohing and awing at Anthony Edwards and just kind of seeing the rest of the world see what we've been seeing here in the Twin Cities.
He's so physically awesome to watch, right? Like it's easy for a non-Timberwolves fan to look at Team USA and who stands out. I mean, it's Ant. I mean, he's just chiseled what he can do athletically on the floor. Right. I mean, he's the guy that can rise up the highest and put the dunks down. And your eye immediately goes to him, right? He's just a physical specimen.
The documentary that's coming out, speaking, I mean, we have the on-court specimen that he is, and we have the off-court personality that he is. And I had to go back when I texted you yesterday, I'm like, hey, this new documentary, Brett, who was producing yesterday, mentioned it to me. And I feel dumb because I looked back. This was announced in like January that they're doing kind of a quarterback and wide receivers on Netflix right now, or receiver, excuse me. And this was announced back in January. So I don't know how I missed it in the midst of the season because it's super cool. But this documentary's coming out. It'll feature not only Anthony Edwards, but it's going to have LeBron, Jason Tatum, Jimmy Butler. Yeah. Oh my! Jimmy Butler should have his own show. And frankly, our guy Anthony Edwards should too. But then just to kind of level things out in case you're overstimulated, one of my favorite players in the league, but you know he's going to be boring as bleep, Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah, fits right in with that category.
One of these things is not like the other.
So you got LeBron, okay. We got self-proclaimed king. That'll be interesting, and probably you'll see Bronny-related bits. Jason Tatum, $300 million richer a couple of weeks ago. Jimmy's Jimmy, our guy, the toast of the town.
But I feel like
Domantas.
I feel like a lot of people have seen and heard from LeBron doing a number of different things through the years, right? And Jimmy Butler has been out there for the last 5 years, doing his own thing. So you kind of know about those two guys. Jason Tatum, obviously coming off an NBA title, it'll be interesting to see some of that. But this is a chance for Ant to be on that center stage, and it's so funny that they taped. They have camera crews. The Wolves had so many camera crews, and this is not, they're not unlike any other team in the league from this perspective. You've always got social media people around the team. So there's people snapping photos, they're snapping video, they're working on projects. And then you had Rudy had his documentary, which he put out last year, but is filming again for another one. And so you always have these, and then NBA Films comes around every once in a while. We had a week where ESPN was with us for a couple of days filming everything. And then you had Ant's, the production company that does this is LeBron's, Peyton Manning, and Barack Obama. Those three have teamed up for this yet to be named feature. It's coming in Netflix. So it's really an opportunity for Anthony Edwards to kind of take a center stage. And it's funny, just being around the team and being at practices, there are so many cameras around, you don't even realize. I saw that announcement too, and then you kind of forget about it, and you don't realize the cameras are there because the cameras are there all the time. And these guys are just, this day and age, they're always used to either a phone in their face, a camera, anything, an interview, here's a little microphone. What's your feelings on this? That kind of thing. They're so used to that kind of thing.
Well, and I've always thought that as soon as you put a camera into the mix, that people will inherently act differently. Mm-hmm. But to your point,
right?
Whether and just being around the Vikings camp practice starts the first camp practice a week from Saturday. It's going to be awesome. When I get there, there's going to be significant Vikings Entertainment Network. We call them VEN, similar to the Wolves. They're going to be all over the place. Cameras all over the place for content. Cameras all over the place for watching the practices back themselves. And then inherently, I guess I should also think that it was probably easy, just because they're all there anyway, to slip an extra camera in for a quarterback with Kirk Cousins, slip an extra camera in there last year for Justin Jefferson. So while I do believe that people act differently around cameras, the ability to kind of just forget that you're also being potentially chronicled for a documentary, because with Anthony, I look at him as being also a bit different in regard that if the microphone is not in front of his face, he's going to say something a certain way. If the microphone was there, I think he'd say probably the exact same thing.
Yes. No, that's what I'm getting at. Like, it's It's not on camera versus off camera anymore at this level in the NBA. It's almost like the camera is always on. The microphones are always on. And these guys are very comfortable with it. They understand it. They know it. And a lot of them have an own personal interest in what is said. And like I said, Rudy's controlling his own documentary. So he's going to have a vested interest in that. Ant has a vested interest in this Netflix series. So they've become very comfortable with that. And it was, by the time you get to the Western Conference Finals and all the media attention is now on only one of two series going on, right?
Yeah.
The East and the West. That's usually a lot of eyeballs. That's a lot of social media attention. You're used to it at that point. I mean, it's really not that much different than anywhere during the regular season or into the postseason.
For years in the NBA, it was a conversation, and it's a bit like this in baseball, only the baseball side of it is more based on the fact that the big markets just have all the cash from a TV rights deal, and they can spend all the money, the Yankees and the Dodgers of the world. But in the NBA, the conversation was, you can't truly be a massive star in a place like Minnesota. Oklahoma City's another example of it. Dallas,
Milwaukee
has
Giannis.
really grown. Milwaukee, correct. But the way that has changed from a social media and a video chronicling standpoint is seen through the NBA playoffs by 50 freaking miles, social media views, NBA.com related clicks and content. Hundreds of millions of people were clicking on Anthony Edwards highlights.
Yep.
He can't hide in the cornfields anymore. I think that's awesome.
It is awesome. It's great for the league that players are starting to realize that they don't have to be in New York, LA, Chicago to be on Netflix and can do it when he's in Minnesota. Giannis is a former MVP of this league. He doesn't have to go into these big markets, doesn't have to go to Miami to do it. He can do it in Milwaukee, he can bring them a title. And I think the players are starting to realize that it actually might even mean more if you stay with the team you're at, or at least, if the team wants you and you want to stay. You have to have two sides to this thing. But how much more that means if Ant can deliver a title to Minnesota, that would be, I think, infinitesimally better than being a free agent, going to New York, teaming up with who knows who, and winning a title that way. I think guys realize, like Giannis winning it for Milwaukee, that's an incredible moment for that town, for that state, and for the league for that matter.
Or like Dirk in Dallas.
Dirk does it in Dallas. Dallas, a little bit of a bigger market, but Dirk stayed and built that thing up and got that 2011 title.
It's Steph Curry had mentioned this. This is weeks ago now, and it just kind of it made me think at the time, and the idea of dynasties in the NBA, and whether it's the old Celtics, it's the Showtime Lakers, Jordan's Bulls. We know what these dynasties are. It's Kobe's stretch with the Lakers as well. That's almost like two eras within one, between Shaq and then you got Pau Gasol years later, and he wins 5 titles. But Curry was kind of talking to just the way things are in the league, that he doesn't believe that there will be another dynasty like a Golden State Warriors team where Curry gets drafted, maybe let's say 2009 or 2010, I forget. And then a couple of years later, it's Clay. The year after that, underrated second-round pick, even though he's a jerk, Draymond Green, and they're off to the races, right? They're good for a 12-year stretch. That's incredible.
Yeah.
But to your point, with people moving around and all of those things, it does feel like we're seeing as salary changes and all of that, the way that teams are slowly but surely getting a better grasp on being able to keep their guys financially and pull those levers to keep guys local, that I would actually say that the league itself is working towards getting away from the mercenaries and the guns for hire. I mean, as good as LeBron is, he's basically been a gun for hire for most of his career in one way or another.
By his own choosing.
By his own choosing, absolutely. And so the way that teams maybe are more suited now or more armed to mitigate that, I would actually say that the chances of a team organically building a juggernaut, I think it could be more likely moving forward.
It's interesting to see where this is going. Adam Silver was just asked about this at his press conference in Las Vegas about the second apron and about how this is something that was put in place. I think probably this is the first year of it. It's really punitive to spend a ton of money, and the Wolves are going to find this out firsthand because they're going to be in that second apron. And when you spend a lot of money in your roster and you keep your guys, they've kept Cat, they traded for Rudy, and they've paid Ant, they've kept Jaden McDaniels, but it becomes really expensive. You get up into that second apron, and all of a sudden they start taking away some things like you can't trade a first-round pick from 5 or 6 years out now. Yeah. Other teams can.
We showed them. We used 7 years down the road.
This is what Tim Connolly in the front office smartly did, is that they knew they were going to be in the second apron, and if they're not technically in the second apron until the end of the calendar year, it's what happens at the very end.
Okay.
So you could dump along the way and dump salary and get under it, but they look, that's not going to happen. And they realize they're going to be there, so trade that pick now, get a top 10 player for it, because you've kind of pushed your chips into this window of next year, the year after, possibly the year after that, rather than let it go away, and you might not be able to use it. So smart play. But the second apron thing is a really big deal in the league. It's going to be really punitive to teams, taking away mid-level exceptions, all these little things that probably fans and I don't even understand to the nth degree. But it becomes harder and harder to do that. And you'd love to find a happy medium. How can you reward teams for keeping their players? How do we keep Anthony Edwards? The Wolves were smart to draft him number 1. They were smart to draft Jaden McDaniels. But how do you allow the teams to keep them if those guys are max players? And Jaden is close to a max player, but not. Ant is. And if he makes, he's going to make the maximum amount percentage-wise of the salary cap, based on the fact that he's going to be all NBA. Heck, he could be in the MVP conversation next year. That becomes really punitive. And
it does.
It's almost like, and I've heard this idea floated years ago, that, should a max player who's going to get 30% of the salary cap, and if they get an all NBA, that jumps them to 35% or 33 or whatever the number is, should that all count against the luxury tax? It gets really complicated, but somehow you've got to find a way to let teams keep their guys even when they do get expensive.
Now, on the other side of that, some would say that also does help avoid, it's tougher for other teams to go and grab him and pay him the max then as well, because every team is dealing with those issues. Yeah. And maybe there's a bit of an incentive, if you will, to stay local if you can.
I think what we're eventually going to see, and we'll start to see it coming up, is that you got so many teams that have high-end talent. And if you're not having success, if you've got some guys up there and your team's only 500 or not making a deep playoff run, I think you're going to start to see some salaries swapped. If you want to trade, the only way to get rid of that would be to trade for an equal salary. Yeah. And so I think you're going to start to see some big names kind of get traded for each other, whether it's coming up at the trade deadline or next offseason, because you've got so many of these guys, I think, at a really elite level, but maybe their team isn't having that success, and the only way to get off of it, rather than wait till the contract is over, is to trade for another superstar somewhere else who's in a similar situation.
Well, that's a good point. That's good perspective. And that's Alan Horton, voice of the Timberwolves at Wolves Radio via X. When we return, I do want to jump into not only the Olympics, but getting back to a couple of players I'm interested in. He mentions Joe Ingles, so you're going to be watching the Aussies in the Olympics and such, but what does Joe Ingles mean on this team in 2024, 2025, Ant for MVP? We're just loving this team. We're going to continue talking about it 9 to noon, and it sets up the TimberTech set list 9 to noon. Ben Lieber's in studio at 10, and camp. 9 days, I mentioned it, a week from Saturday, the first Vikings training camp practice. We'll talk some NFL with Lieber at 10. And then at 11 o'clock, I'm going to get to meet, and in some ways you're going to get to meet, Gophers running back Darius Taylor as he is about to enter his sophomore season with Sky Uma and PJ Flex team, the 2024 season, not too far away as well. So excited to chat with him. Blake Barrett's from Institute for Athletes. Looking forward to seeing him again. And that makes the TimberTech set list brought to you by TimberTech, timbertech.com. But before we go to break, Max Fuller does indeed have he's got a keyword, right?
I do have it this time.
Let's go.
TheFanandBigDeck.com. Want to give you a shot to put $1,000 in your hand with our national cash contest. Enter the keyword cash. That's easy at KFAN.com now for your shot at winning. That's keyword cash. Enter it now at KFAN.com. To join your favorite KFAN personalities, including PA and the man across the glass from me, Nordo, this Friday at Forgotten Star Brewing for a night of games. Awesome prizes, including tickets to See the Purple and live music. Doors open at 5 p.m. You get the full details now at KFAN.com, keyword party.
Yeah, I think PA and I might actually be kicking off festivities. I know there's a red carpet broadcast taking place 6:30 to 7. But then those of you that are Forgotten Star Brewery, a lot of giveaway opportunities, and that starts early at 7 o'clock. And you'll learn more details about that once you jump in there and grab yourself a beer and get ready for a night of fun at Forgotten Star. Looking forward to that. Always looking forward to Alan Horton being in studio. I got this text message during the opening segment, and I haven't really followed it, but you mentioned it's super cool that whether we're watching Rudy in France and Joe Ingles, although is Joe Ingles on the team?
Yes.
He is playing in Australia?
Yeah,
okay,
I
should have known that.
He just played in Team USA in Abu Dhabi just a couple days ago.
Well, then that's my fault for not paying attention. But somebody asked, why isn't Cat playing for the Dominican Republic? Was there a surprise to that at all? Because at one point I saw he might be either a reserve or an extra man on the roster, doesn't make the final roster. So then I'm looking at the Dominican Republic and I'm looking, okay, I know who Chris Duarte is.
But I don't think. See, the Olympics are a much small. I think there's only 12 teams that make the Olympics. The World Cup last year, Dominican Republic did make that group. I think it's a bigger group. So I don't think Dominican Republic is one of the final 12 teams, are they?
Well, it says that they were doing some qualifying. Maybe they just.
So they might have been in that qualifying round.
Okay.
And Cat, I don't know the reason why Cat wouldn't have been a part of that team. I know he's been bouncing around. You see him in Las Vegas. I think he was in Paris a couple of weeks ago for some fashion stuff. So he likes to enjoy that offseason. Although last fall he was a part of that Dominican team and had a lot of fun with it. And I don't know where they are in their. They must have lost the qualification round, but I don't know why he didn't play.
Well, ultimately, this is a case, Alan, of where I asked you a question that I needed to do more research on before I just threw something out there. So that's completely my fault. But speaking of Carl. You start the off season, and immediately there were conversations, and there have been in the past, about trading Karl Anthony Towns and people floating things. We talked about it on these airwaves. The idea of moving a Karl and getting a Trae Young from Atlanta, for instance, or something like that. Not hearing a lot of that now. There's the excitement around the new kids, the excitement about what this roster looks like, even if we don't understand the second apron. The excitement around what we're looking forward to includes Karl, and I'm excited to move forward in that vein.
Well, you made the Western Conference Finals with this group. Why would you want to change it unless you were forced to? And I think that's why have always been kind of rumors around Karl being traded to try to avoid this second apron. But it looks like the Wolves are full force headed towards that second apron and don't have a problem with it, which is what you love to see from ownership. You want to see a team invest in a group. They got you to the Western Conference Finals. I thought Cat played extremely well in the first two rounds of that series.
Yeah. And
he wasn't the only one who didn't play well against Dallas.
Correct.
Let's put that out there first. But this team, I just thought, took such a step this year, Eric, in the sense that, you avoid that play-in tournament. For 2 straight years, you were in the play-in. You finished up on a Sunday of the regular season. Then you're playing on a Tuesday. One of those years you played again on a Friday, and then you start it was last season, 2 years ago. Now you started up Sunday in Denver. Guess what? It's not ideal to be in the play-in and try to make a deep run in the postseason. We saw Lakers do it 2 years ago. We saw Miami do it all the way to the finals. But those are the exceptions rather than the rule. And so the Wolves avoided that, and they got a week off before that Phoenix series. And man, were they dialed in for that Phoenix series, winning all 4 games. Really impressive. And then they got another, basically a week before that Denver series, a team they feel really confident against and have had good success against. And they get those first 2 wins. And then I think if you look back at that 3 or 4 day break that they had between games 2 and 3, I think that's where you look back and you say, okay, that's where things got off track a little bit. That's when everybody had already penciled in the Wolves to the NBA Finals, completely overlooking the Dallas Mavericks and Luka and Kyrie. You had Ant being on Good Morning America. There was tons of media, and the Wolves were feeling really good about themselves, winning those first 2 games in Denver, and then to lose 3 in a row. And then you have to come back and win games 6 and 7. And then there was no break between that Dallas game. It was 1 day off. You travel back. And next day, you're starting against Dallas, and you immediately lose that game, lose game 2, and now you're in a hole. I think it goes back to between games 2 and 3 against Denver. If you somehow could have harnessed that and kept things going, I think this is something the Wolves will learn from. You have to go through that to learn from it. It was like 2 years ago, the Wolves, had this high level of play that they achieved most nights, but then they'd play a poor team, a sub 500 team, and lose. And they had that's what hurt them 2 years ago. But they moved on from that. They were much more consistent this past year. And I think when they look back at this past season, that's the gap between games 2 and 3, where they'll look back, okay, we let this thing slip away right there. Because if you take care of business against Denver, then I do think it becomes a different series against Dallas. I think the quick turnaround, the mental and physical fatigue that the team felt after that Denver series, when you rally from 20 down with 22 minutes left to play, unbelievable comeback, biggest in the Game 7 in NBA playoff history, all that. But then to quickly turn around and face a Dallas team that they hadn't seen since January. And when they did see Dallas last, it was a completely different team. There was no Gafford on that team. And they made some moves at the deadline, and it was a completely different-looking Dallas team.
Two things here, Alan. First of all, Covenant Cleanup, which is a sponsorable segment because it should happen multiple times per day. A bit of stupid from me, Nordo. The Dominican Republic did not qualify for the Olympics.
Right.
So that's just me being a moron.
They may have been in the qualifying pool.
Look, Carl's enjoying the summer. Yes. That's the end of things there. Covenant Cleanup provided by nobody. My fault, everybody. Secondly, to that end, during that week that they had up 2-0 on the Nugs before they went to Denver and things, or excuse me, before they came home and things looked different. We learned from it. That's the biggest thing for me is the learning experience of that grind is one thing. Anthony Edwards, you could tell at times, and he's even spoken about it, whether it's a diet thing or whatever it is, understanding that if we're going to be playing deep into May/June and beyond, that I got to be more fit. We got to be ready mentally and physically for this. But learning about it as fans, I mean, you win the first 6 games, and I was having a Nuggets analyst on, longtime TV guy, and his name's
Scott Hastings.
There we go, Scott Hastings. And at your suggestion, by the way, if you're going to talk to anybody with the Nuggets, you got to talk to Scott Hastings, who was awesome.
Yeah.
But he was resigned. I mean, it was almost like he was eulogizing his team with us, and it was Thursday or Friday before that game 3.
Yep.
And that's how we spent a week partying.
Absolutely.
We spent a week partying, and I think it'd be stupid to think
my shirt was already off.
In some ways, the players, Max didn't wear clothes for multiple
I saw
days
videos
in a row.
of it. Yeah, I know.
The Hootie Hoo, we made Hootie Hoo t-shirts, not for the fans, but for him to actually wear a freaking shirt once in a while. And but then the knockdown to earth, that experience factor specifically as the West reshapes itself. Like OKC, super exciting team. They're young. They have a chance to get better, though, which kind of scares me a little bit. And they got rid of Giddey now, and that Jalen Johnson's an absolute force. Chet's going to be older, and, of course, Gilgeous-Alexander's a stud.
So two little additions for them that aren't so little, Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein, who comes over from the Knicks, and Caruso comes over from the Bulls.
I love Hartenstein. Really
good additions to that team.
How about Tibbs, though? Love or hate Tibbs? They have a potential beast because the Celtics, in some ways, let's talk about route of least resistance for a moment in terms of the Mavs coming out of the West versus the situation in the Eastern Conference where the Heat just didn't have it, right? And the Sixers, once they have him beat out, then he's back, but he's not the same.
Yep.
And Maxey just can't do everything by himself. But you think about the ranks in that mix. The Cavs strike me as being a team that's always going to be a talker.
Yep.
But they're not getting to the top of the mountain, in my opinion. So I think the Celtics had an easy route. But you start putting like OG Anunoby, you start putting McCall Bridge. I mean, having that conversation. Oh, by the way, like half their team had devastating injuries. Dante DiVincenzo having to step in. He's scoring 25 a game.
Julius Randle didn't even play the final month of the season or the postseason.
That's a sleeping giant at Madison Square Garden. Tibbs has got it going on.
And then you've got Jalen Brunson, who has a chance to sign an extension and does, even though he's leaving. Technically the number is $113 million he left on the table. That's a little bit misleading. He left about $35 million on the table by signing an extension now instead of waiting 1 year and then taking a bigger max deal. But he does that, and it allows the Knicks an extra $10, $15 million a year for some salary cap relief to be able to spend some money on guys like Mikal Bridges. You bring in Bridges to Brunson to DiVincenzo to Josh Hart. To
Josh Hart was
Mitchell
awesome.
Robinson, if that guy can stay healthy, and that's a big if, along with Julius Randle, you've got a ton for Tibbs to work with, and Leon Rose, who is, these things are all intertwined, right? Like Leon Rose's son is the agent for Jalen Brunson. And like Leon Rose was the agent for Tibbs for a long, and Leon Rose was the agent for a lot of people. There's all sorts of interesting ties there, but they in 4 years have completely turned that thing over. You'd have to put them right up there in the top 3 in the East. Obviously behind Boston, they're the defending champs, but a second year, nobody's won back-to-back titles since since Golden State did it.
Yeah.
So it's tough to do. And there has to be a drop-off for Boston. I think New York is right there. I think they're right there. And Philly's probably right there now that they add Paul George. If you get George, Embiid, and Maxey together, which they have, and if they're healthy, that could be a trio that you have to deal with as well.
Last one for you, Alan.
Reports also indicate that Bridges is taking a similar deal as well, supposedly. So,
interesting. I don't know what is his contract up, or he's probably extension eligible.
Probably.
Yeah, because I remember he signed like some 4-year, $100 million deals. Like he's on 25 a year, which is relatively low in this day and age.
Well, for me with Brunson, it all goes back. They had an opportunity to sign him in Dallas for not a lot of money.
Yeah.
And they chose not to.
Yeah. They let him go. And he's been, the guy is unbelievable.
No, he's one of the most badass players in the league. Plays well above his size, but it's basically Team Villanova over there with all those guys.
4 former Wildcats there.
That's
and they have a great rapport with one another, too. They have a lot of fun with it.
Thanks for hanging out with me in studio, man.
Yeah, man.
God, I'm pumped for the Olympics now that I can figure out who's actually in the Olympics. But and I'm pumped for this summer league team. It's real quickly before I let you go.
Yeah.
It's Wolves and Rockets tonight. Terrence Shannon Jr. looking like the physical force and specimen we expected from a 23-year-old. Dillingham, room to grow. He's just a baby. Just 10,000-foot view as we leave this year in terms of summer league moving forward with Heinz's team.
Yeah, it looks like it'll be the final game of the summer league as well. You play 4 games, and then only the top 4 teams out of 30 move on to the semis. They really wrap this thing up. It used to be you'd go into a loser's bracket, then a winner's bracket, and you'd extend this thing for another 5 days. They said enough with that. Let's just get the top 4. And so there's still 6 undefeated teams. So the Wolves would need a lot of help, and they'd have to dominate the Rockets and get that point differential up because that would be the tiebreaker. So it'll be the final. It should be the final summer league game, 10:00 tonight. I think that one's on the big ESPN. So you got Rockets and Wolves coming up tonight, and then they'll basically take off for August. It'll be and then it's Olympic basketball. I mean, this is perfectly timed. Next couple of weeks, Team USA goes from Abu Dhabi. See, they started in Vegas, then they go to Abu Dhabi, then they go to London to play a couple of exhibition games, then they finally move down to Paris. They're trying to hit every possible location, I guess.
The Rockstar Tour.
Yeah, but Abu Dhabi's become, Ant has now been there, I think, 3 different times because Team USA went there last year.
I think Finch joined us from Abu Dhabi a year or 2 ago.
And we were there in the preseason, which feels like.
That's what it was.
That's amazing. We played the Dallas Mavericks, and those 2 teams ended up being the final 2 teams in the West. Boston, by the way, is going to Abu Dhabi this year. Boston, and I can't remember who the second team is, but. So it'll be the Olympics will be fun. So go Rudy with France. Yes. Go Nikhil with Canada. Joe Ingles. I think
Australia.
I think Joe's got something left, even with 37 years of age. He's crafty. He's smart, like you and I are.
There we go.
And Max. So I don't want to leave you out, man. He's high level. Like he could join this conversation.
Okay, all right.
No, he could join this conversation.
Let me just walk out of this Mensa meeting real quick over here.
He can. Anybody who's watched the Jazz through the years, probably not a lot of Wolves fans saw the Magic this past year when he played, but he still averaged almost 20 minutes a night.
Yeah,
can still shoot it. You never lose that. And
he'll have an 8-9 assist game here and there as well.
He'll dish it. He knows how to play. He knows how to play the game.
Looking forward to seeing him on the court. Thanks again, as always, at Wolves Radio via X for Alan Horton. Ben Lieber in studio at the top of the hour. Stay tuned for that. Nordo in for PA 9 to noon.
Want to chime in on what's happening with your favorite KFAN program? Make your voice heard on the Bradshaw and Bryant text line. Let us know what you have to say by texting your message to 64686. That's 64686. Standard message and data rates apply.
What up? Short segment here. Time for a Vike Bite. And then Ben Lieber is going to join us in studio at 10. So let's jump into it for a few minutes here. Vikes Bites is always presented by Thousand Hills Lifetime Grazed Grass-Fed Beef. And you can go to thousandhillslifetimegrazed.com, learn more about regenerative agriculture, and you can learn about a Clearwater, Minnesota-based company. Support local. Buy online. Box of meat shows up at your doorstep. Go to Coburn's. Go to your local co-op. And Thousand Hills, by the way, speaking of our 11 o'clock guest, they're all about local athletics and certain programs and keeping guys local. So we love that. Now, Darius is from Detroit, but keeping some of his teammates around, you could say, or keeping other members of the athletics department in-house, they're all about supporting local. You should too. ThousandHillsLifetimeGrays.com. And after that word salad, let's hear a Vike Bite.
Vike Bite! We're just 3 days away from rookies reporting, Nordo. They report on the 21st over the weekends. The veterans will report on July 23rd, with the first open practice going down on the 27th. So just mere days away from the start of training camp. Oh, by the way, Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell will be in the building tomorrow morning to play the Initials game with the Power Trip Morning Show. How do you think old KOC is going to fare at the Initials game, Nordo?
Well, I don't think he's going to get shut out, but we've seen it time and time again, save for, was it Doyoung Park that just came in and blasted people, never playing it before?
It was, yeah.
Maybe... Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's very rare that someone comes in and reaches immediate success.
Gleeman was really good, too.
Gleeman was good right out of the gates, absolutely. A couple of baseball nerds, weird. He's not going to win tomorrow. It's not going to be great.
No chance.
His 2024 Vikings season likely has a lot more promise than his prospects in the Initials game. But that's sweet. We're still at this time of the year, and I'm glad you mentioned that. You got to tune in to the Power Trip, and many of you do already. But at 8 o'clock, Vikings head coach KOC, Kevin O'Connell, is going to be in studio. He will participate in the Initials game. He will likely not win, but it'll be fun to get maybe a different side of the head coach hanging out with the Power Trip guys. And we're just slowly ushering our way in to when guys start reporting. There's going to be, of course, Addison conversation, wondering how the team is dealing with the awful death of Kyrie Jackson, but ultimately getting pads on, getting onto the field. We're 9 days from that. We're 9 days from pads. We're 9 days from seeing J.J. McCarthy. Still doesn't have a contract. What's up with that? But we're 9 days from seeing him on the field. We're 9 days from seeing Dallas Turner on the field. We're 9 days from seeing Levi Drake Rodriguez on the field, all those guys, and they start reporting at the end of this weekend. So can't wait for that. And as we wrap up this Vike Bite, we're going to continue Vikings conversation final hour as well, and more, of course, with Lieber. But a week from Saturday, we will be on the perch. I saw it on X yesterday. Somebody posted a picture of that exclusive KFAN Wilf-provided perch. And it looks beautiful. And we're going to be out there, Meat Sauce and I, on next Saturday. And we're going to be able to finally report activity on the field taking place for the Purple. So we're super excited about that. And when we return, maybe we'll continue that conversation. 9 days until that first practice, a week from Saturday. Ben Lieber, weekly guest, not only on the Power Trip, not only on Barrero, but here 9 to noon as well. And we're going to chat with him. Thank you to Max for that Vike Bite, singular, more to come. And we'll chat with Lieber around the corner as well. It's 9 to noon on the Fan.